Welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Chris McGrath. I'll be your presenter today, and we're speaking on the topic, how to build an event chatbot. My name is Chris McGrath. I'm the founder of TangoWork, which is a chatbot consultancy. We consult on chatbots. We also provide chatbot software. So I want to start off by showing you a chatbot that we've helped the Intranet Now conference build. And this will kind of frame things for you. So notice I'm at the Intranet Now Facebook page. So it's for their conference. It's a conference they do annually, an independent conference for intranets. It's on the 5th of October in London. And because they have a chatbot, it shows me right away the little messenger panel. And it says, Intranet Now is active now. Start a conversation. Hi, Chris. This is the chatbot for the Intranet Now conference, 5th October 2017. So I click Get Started. And it gives me a little intro here. Welcome to the Intranet Now chatbot. Use the menu below to navigate, or type things like, where do I buy tickets, or who are the speakers? Well, let's try that. Who are the speakers? Helen and Wedge and Leslie. I can look at any of their details. Notice I can click this menu here too and see things like the schedule or the speakers or sponsors or event details. Let's see where it is. I'll click Venue. And I can do all this within my phone as well. If I just flip over to QuickTime. Perfect. Now you're seeing my screen. And you can see everything that we've done within the web browser version of the Intranet Now chatbot is also available here within my Facebook Messenger client. So again, I can send a message and I can ask, is there any food? And it tells me, oh, lunch. We like to eat as much as anyone, so there will be food. Expect light refreshments. So that's a quick introduction to what the chatbot will look like in the end. So let's back up now a little bit to the beginning and talk about how do we get here. So first, let's talk about 10 reasons why you might want to consider using an event chatbot, especially instead of a conference app. And the first reason, I think, is there's no installation. You don't have to install a chatbot. You've already got the underlying messaging app. You probably already have Facebook Messenger installed, or you can also, of course, deploy it on SMS or in Skype. And this is important because people aren't installing apps. According to an article and a study about a year ago, the average person last month installed 0 apps on their phone. And then when they get a new phone, all those apps are gone. But with a chatbot, a messaging app is one of the first things that everybody installs on their phone, and their contacts follow them around. So you don't have to worry about the installation process with a chatbot. It's going to run in any of these apps that you already have. A second reason is you get instant upgrades. Now, with apps, on some conference apps, you actually have to push a new build for the app and get people to upgrade to get an update to the schedule. Not all, but some are like that. But with a chatbot, your upgrades are instant. It all happens on the server. A third reason to look at a chatbot is they're super fast. Conversational UI, these are just text exchanges going back and forth, consumes very little bandwidth. And I think you've all been at a conference where there wasn't enough bandwidth for anyone. Well, there's always enough bandwidth for sending text messages, and that's what works within a chatbot. A fourth reason is that chatbot messages are read in minutes. So if you use push notifications, you're going to get your event message out there. Push notifications are always turned on for messaging apps, right? A messaging app is kind of useless if you don't have the push notifications turned on. Now, you can't assume, though, with a conference app that people will say yes to turning on the push notifications, which then makes any subscription messaging you do useless. But that's not the case with chatbots. You can count on it being there. 5, chatbots, the content is easier to read because that medium of little speech bubbles forces us to be brief, and those short messages are fast and easy to read. A sixth reason to consider an event chatbot is it strengthens your Facebook presence. Like you saw just now, the Intranet Now chatbot is attached to their Facebook page. That's how you often access a messenger bot. So if you're already doing something on Facebook. It just strengthens your presence there. Seventh reason to consider an event chatbot is they're accessible. A text or a voice-based UI works beautifully for users with disabilities, with any visual impairments. They even work without internet because you can run your bot strictly over SMS. A ninth reason why you should consider an event chatbot is because you can scan a code to access. You can have a little scan code like you see right here. You can put that on your posters at the events. People can scan that within Facebook Messenger, and it loads the bot in seconds, making your bot easy to find. And a 10th reason to use an event chatbot, I think this is the biggest one, is that they are easy to use. Do you know how to type? Do you know how to talk? Then you know how to use an event chatbot. Now, if you're like me, you've downloaded conference apps before and been sorely disappointed and been confused trying to figure out how to use them. But chatbots are just so easy. And this is such a big deal because most computer users are not strong users. These are the results from a fascinating study of 216,000 people. You know, in the United States, only 5% of people are strong computer users. And what's even more interesting about this study is the definition of strong. A strong computer user, according to the study, was somebody who could look at an email message from 3 different people about booking a meeting and evaluate what the best time was and then send out a meeting invite. Now, I know that all of you on this call can do that, but I think we lose sight of who the typical computer user is. And we give them interfaces that look like this or that look like this. But the simple back and forth text messaging, everybody can understand that. It's simple, it's uncluttered, it's linear, and it works almost like a real conversation. And this is likely the biggest reason for you to consider an event chatbot. All right, let's talk about some chatbot terminology, and this gets us all on the same page using, there's some terms in the space that are recurring. If we look at this, show me the top stories. In chatbot terminology, the utterance is the whole thing. Show me the top stories. We call that the utterance, anything that the user says. The intent is get news. You could call it anything you want. You could just call it news or show news. But the intent is the intention of the user, and that is extracted from the utterance. A third term to consider is the entity. So in this example, show me the top stories about sports. The whole thing is the utterance. The intent is still the same, it's get news, but then that intent is modified by the entity sports. So it tells me not just to get all the news, get the sports news. So news topic becomes our entity. So that's some important vocabulary in working with chatbots, especially this concept of intents. What is the user's intention? Now let's talk a little bit about the basic logic of how a chatbot can work. This is the simplest. There's an utterance and a message, and we're done. So in this example, what is Wi-Fi password? The bot responds, it's Fairmont Guest, and we're done. This is slightly more complicated. This is an utterance with a clarification and then a message. The clarification might be what type or which one or where. So in the example, what is the Wi-Fi password? For the lobby or the conference room? For the lobby. It's Fairmont Guest. A third example is an utterance, and then you present a list to the user and then give them a message. What is the Wi-Fi password? Pick the Wi-Fi password you need, it responds. The lobby, the conference room, or the atrium? The user enters 1, the lobby, and the bot responds, it's Fairmont Guest. This is the kind of exchange that I think most bot builders should focus on. It's simple, and it's finished quickly, and it avoids modality. Modality is when the bot gets into a state when you are expecting a specific response. So look at this example of a modal state. Hi, I'm Zoe. What's your name? Zach. Nice to meet you, Zach. Where are you located? Zach just wants to know what the Wi-Fi password is, so he types Wi-Fi. But the bot is expecting a geographic location. So it responds, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Where are you located? Zach tries again. Wi-Fi password. I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Where are you located? You can see how frustrating this would be for the end user. So in the bots that we build at TangoWork, we really try to avoid this kind of state, which is a modal state, and instead be ready to accept anything and give a good answer. Kind of the way Siri works on your iPhone. The reason it's important too is your user can be interrupted mid-task. So maybe they did ask maybe it's important that they define their location. But then something happens, I don't know, they take a phone call, and then they go back to the bot, and now they've got a different need. But the only thing that the bot is going to understand is a location. So because users are often interrupted mid-task, we want to avoid this state. And it also makes the building of the bot so much easier. See, look at this kind of flowchart here. This is one I just Googled. This kind of complicated conversation flow is, I think, what intimidates many people when they're starting to create a chatbot. But you don't have to do this. Get away from modality and instead just stick with these simple ones that we've talked about. The user says something, you respond, and it's done. Or you ask for a clarification, then it's done. Or you present them with a simple list, and then it's done, and you avoid a confusing state. So that will help you with any bot you build, including event chatbots. So where do you start when you're planning your event chatbot? Well, you start with your intents, planning them out. And for this, we use a simple spreadsheet that looks like this. And you can download this spreadsheet from the handout section. Now notice the first column in your core content is the intent name, so speakers. The next column is sample utterances. You don't have to put everything in there. It's just enough to give us a bit of an idea. Who are the speakers? Is Seth Godin presenting? And you notice in that sample utterance, there's a possible entity, speaker name. So Seth Godin would be the entity in that case. And then if this content is coming from somewhere, you can use this column. And then the last column, last two columns, you talk about how do you want to sort the content. So with an intent such as speakers, you can imagine that it might make sense for your event chatbot to sort that alphabetically. But then again, they'll see the same person, the person at the start of the alphabet, every single time they type speakers. So maybe it makes more sense to present those randomly. In the next example, schedule. Here's some sample utterances. What is the agenda? Schedule. Agenda for tomorrow. Tomorrow then would be an entity of date time, and that would modify how we respond. How do you want to sort those? Well, you want the oldest, or really the first event to be, or the first item on the agenda to become first, not the last. And how do you want to present it? If you're presenting a list of agenda items, cards is the default in the bots that we're building with TangoWork. A card is nice and visual, and you'll see some examples of those in a second. But you could also say none, which means just give the first best match. Or you could also do a numbered list, which would make sense for, say, an SMS bot that can't do visuals or buttons. Or you could send through buttons. Anyway, this is where your chatbot starts. Define your intent, your sample utterances. It's a simple spreadsheet, but it works very well for architecting your bot. Let's now look at some of these within our sample bot that we were talking about. All right, so what do we want to ask the Intranet Now bot? How about tickets? This is an example of a simple response. It just gives the best one response to the input for tickets. So there's the tickets are on sale, check the rates here, independent consultants, blah, blah, blah. If I type speakers like we did earlier, instead of a simple response, it gives me cards. Scott MacArthur, Leslie Crook, Wedge Black. I can click any of these and view their details. That's a card. All right, now let's try an intent that we haven't entered yet. And we're going to get an error on this one, past events. And this will give us an opportunity to show how setting up an intent works. Past events. Sorry, I couldn't find a match for that. Well, now I'm going to take you over to the TangoWork Management Console where everything for this bot is managed. Now, there's 4 areas over here. The first is messages, and that's all the content. So if I type speakers, it narrows down. Here's the 10 speakers entered in the system so far. The one we just looked at was Scott MacArthur. Oh, actually it was somebody else, but anyway. The next tab on the left is broadcasts, and this is if we want to proactively send a message to all of our users. This is very useful if you want to send out a notification during the event. People would make sense if you've got a restricted bot where, say, only attendees, registered attendees, can view the bot. So that's up to you whether you want to make it available to the public so that they can all look in, or whether it's just for registered users. So if so, you would have the registered users here, and they would authorize when accessing the bot. And then you would probably divide them into lists. For example, all people or just people that are attending a certain track in order to differentiate them when you're sending a broadcast. But anyway, messages is the most important one. And as we add content, we can also check it within here. Again, if I add speakers, this is my web chat, and I can see how it's doing here. All right, there's my people. So again, if I do past events, I get nothing. So I'm going to add a new intent. I go to Intents and click Add. And the name of this, we're going to call it past events, like so. And we're going to use simple word matching, where I'm going to match on, let's say, past events and past years. All right, past years. And sort by newest, that's probably fine. There's other options in here about what we want to send through and how we want lists to appear, but the default should be fine. All right, so now I'm going to type past events, and we're still not going to find anything, are we? Because although I've told it that past events are important words, I haven't added any content around it. So now I'm going to go to messages, and I'm going to add a message. I'm going to click Add, and under my intent, I'm going to find that new intent there, past events. Now, I've already prepared a little bit of content for this. I'm going to go over to Excel and pull it over. So my title is going to be Intranet Now 2016. And I add some content. Our third conference was held on September 30th, 2016. There we go. Save. Now, if I type past events, boom, it brings up that event. It only brings up one because we only have one, but now I'm going to add in Intranet Now 2015, and under my message, I'm going to add this, save. Oh, whoops. I entered that as in the intent news, but I want it to be intent past events. And I'm going to add one more here, Intranet Now 2014, and put in our content. All right, so now I type past events. And I didn't specify an image, but you can see it comes through 2015, 2016. That's fine. All right, but you know what might look better than these cards is maybe just a button. So I'm going to go to Intents and Past Events, and under my lists of messages, I'm going to say display that list as buttons. Save. Now I'm going to type past events. Nice. Intranet Now 2014, 2015, 2016. I click 2016. There it is. All right, now let's level up a bit. So we're doing just a simple text match. You could also view that as a regular expression match for those of you who understand regular expressions. What the simple word matching is doing is just creating a regular expression. So you could do some sort of complex pattern there. But what I want to be able to do is understand normal human language. So normal human language might be something like, tell me about your previous events. And what's it going to come up with? Well, that's not really the right match, is it? It just gave me a schedule. So how do we fix this? Well, this is where your natural language processing engine goes in. And what we use in TangoWork is LUIS. And now I've used all the different natural language processing engines, the one by Facebook, Wit.ai, and the one by Amazon, Amazon Lex, and I keep on coming back to LUIS because it's really easy to use, and it does one thing, and it does it really well. So I'm going to go into my Intranet Now LUIS model. LUIS means a Language Understanding Intelligence Service. And in here, I've got a list of all my intents. So when using TangoWork, you have two logons really, one for the content and one for the natural language processing. So I'm going to add a new intent here, and the intent is going to use the same name as this here, past events we called it. All right, so LUIS, my intent name is past events, and now I'm going to give it some utterances. So what would I say to get the past events? Tell me about previous year's events, past years, or what is the history of this event? Have you ever had this event before? What was the conference like in the past? Okay, there's a bit of a variety, right? Now, we just have to give LUIS some ideas, some samples, right? And it extracts the meaning out of these. It's analyzing all the text here, figuring out what the important words are, and knowing that these utterances mean the intent past events. I'm going to save that, and then I train and publish. I click train. Good. And now we'll publish. All right. So now we've trained it on natural language. Now let's try it out. I'm going to bring up my phone again, and we're going to try it right in Facebook Messenger. We're showing Facebook Messenger too because it's really the dominant messaging app globally. WhatsApp is not open to bots. WhatsApp is popular in some countries. Skype is not really so popular for messaging. Skype for Business is good in certain business contexts, but usually for an event bot, you're looking at what is the most common thing used by the general public. And right now, the answer to that is Facebook Messenger. Anyway, let us now try asking, what about previous years? Now notice, precious, previous years. I haven't trained it on this, right? Is it going to get it? Nah, shoot. Let's try again. Have you ever had this event before? Boom. Come on. Ah, yes. Please choose Intranet Now 2014, Intranet Now 2015, Intranet Now 2016. Now, I never trained it on have you ever had this event before, right? But it deduced that. Now, this error we got, what about previous years? That's a good opportunity to show another feature in LUIS, and that's suggested utterances. So if we go into our intents, and we know that, hey, past events is getting some false positives or some unrecognized content, I click suggested utterances, and it asks me about a bunch of stuff. What is the next session schedule? That's good. Who is speaker name? Good. Speakers. Who is the first speaker? Yeah, speaker name. Yeah, we'll save that. I don't see that suggestion coming through yet, but it will come through shortly. This one asking about the history of the session. So I go in here, and this is an opportunity to manually label things that real users have tried and to improve that natural language comprehension. So I hope that all makes sense. So let's look at a few best practices for building bots. And I took these from three different sources. Facebook Messenger has an excellent source of best practices on their website. So does the Microsoft Bot Framework, and there's a few I added, just 6 of them here. But the first is to be brief. When people are on their phones, distractions abound. It could be another conversation going on in Facebook Messenger. It could be a phone call, or it could be something in their physical environment. But the best way to deal with that is to keep it short. Your content should be super short within an event chatbot. The second, like we talked about earlier, is avoid modality. Avoid a state where your bot is expecting a certain kind of response, like a button or a location or a name, because your user may be interrupted, and when they come back, they may be doing something completely different, and you want your bot to handle that. And the plus side of that is it makes the bot so much easier to build. Instead of doing these complex conversation trees, you're just really thinking about question and answer, or question clarification, answer, or question, list, answer. Third is to mix conversation and GUI. This is something that Facebook Messenger does really well. So conversation is, if we go back to our bot here, conversation is where I'm just asking something like, hey, have you ever had this event before? GUI is when I'm tapping a button, right? So GUI is Intranet Now 2014, Intranet Now 2015. That's easier clicking a button than having to clarify or having to type out 2016. So there's some places where it's easier to use a GUI, and some places where it's easier just to allow text, and there's not a reason why you have to do one completely or the other completely. Imagine trying to pinch and zoom on a map using words, right? It's wholly impractical, and that illustrates where you want to mix a GUI, a graphic user interface, with just text input. And Facebook Messenger, by the way, also gives you this nice little menu at the bottom where you can type in some options. In fact, you can completely disable the human language. You can get rid of this send a message and just make it a menu-driven bot. But for most people, we want to allow that natural language input. Now, going back to our best practices here, the fourth is to design the first interaction carefully. The first impression is critical, and it does a lot to educate the user on what they're able to do with this bot, or to set their expectations. And with any bot, it's important to constrain your domain and not try to solve every problem. The great thing about events is you are already dealing with a fairly narrow domain, event chatbots, and you should be able to deliver really well on that. But compare in the top right corner here these two different introductions. Imagine, hello user, how can I help you? Versus, hello, how can I help you? Orders, products, or help. The second one really narrows the options down for the user and starts to set their expectation. That first impression is critical. The fifth best practice is to grow your pilot gradually. See, when we build websites, we can have a QA team and we can easily test all the possible avenues for navigating that website. And maybe with just a team of 3 or 5 people, we can confidently launch a website, including an event website. Not with chatbots, because there's no way that you can anticipate what users are going to try to enter. So you need to start with a pilot of 3 or 4 or 5 people, get them banging in content, and then training the natural language engine. But then you got to expand it to a bit of a wider group, maybe 10 people or 20 people, and see what they enter into the bot, and then grow from there. But the pilot is much more important with natural language, much more important than with just a static website. And the sixth and final recommendation is to keep your bot up to date. If last-minute event changes aren't reflected on the bot, users will quickly lose confidence. But in my experience with event chatbots, once people are using it, they use it heavily, especially to find out what the next session is and who this person is that's on the stage. So they're always going to be entering what's the next session, or what's today's agenda, or is there any food today, or who is this guy up on the platform, right? And if they're not getting accurate answers from the bot, then they're going to lose confidence on it. So if your event is making last-minute changes, of course you want that to be reflected in your chatbot. Now, we've flown through that, and now I would like to invite your questions. How to run a chatbot strategy workshop is a really useful blog post from the TangoWork website. So be sure to go to tangowork.com and go to our blog, or our Chatbots 101 section, we also call it, to have good how-to articles about chatbots. And also the last handout that you can access is Chatbot Project Key Steps, which kind of shows kind of an overview of the key steps for a chatbot project, divided into 4 key streams: project management, the technology, the content, and engagement. So you can download all those from the chatbot resources. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. Look for the follow-up email, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Again, you can get me on LinkedIn or at tangowork.com. My email address is Chris, C-H-R-I-S, at tangowork.com. And also consider joining our LinkedIn group, Chatbots for Internal Communicators. Thanks for joining us today, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.